Cindy.
Hi, Shang. How are ya?
Good. How are
Good.
you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
So I have an interesting question for you.
Okay.
I've learned about sensory motor therapy.
Ah,
So I
okay.
hear you're an expert on this. So can you share a little bit about it?
Well, I don't know that I would say I'm an expert on it, but I definitely have been trained in it. So I do have 2 years of training in sensory motor psychotherapy. So sensory motor psychotherapy is an interesting one. It is a trauma-focused therapy that specifically works with your body. So it's a somatic therapy. But what Pat Ogden did was she took the different kinds of therapy approaches, whether they were psychotherapy or physical different types of therapies, and combined them into something that is specific for psychotherapy. So if you come in and you're doing the sensory motor work with me, what I'm doing is I'm watching your body and I'm looking for things that shift or change, like small things that might shift or change, right? So let's say that you're talking about something that is really difficult for you, and I notice that there's a change in your breath, or I notice that there's a change in, you start like shaking your hand or your foot, right? And I'm starting to notice, okay, now we're getting some activation. I will start to work with those kinds of things. So if you're new in sensory motor, we'll do more what's called resourcing, which is how do you work with your body to calm it down. So for the window of tolerance, it's kind of like in this space between the two is what you're able to handle. It's the amount of anxiety you're able to tolerate. So if you go outside of that, let's say you're in what we refer to as hyperarousal, then it's like you're really activated, you're really anxious, you're really on alert, you're really, you're really panicky or or highly anxious, like ready to have an anxiety attack. You're now outside of what you can handle. Or if you're really dissociated, numb, staring off, not really tuned in, you're talking about something, but you're really gone. That also means that you're outside of what you can handle. So hyperactivation or hypoactivation, both of those are actually a part of PTSD or trauma. And so when we're working with sensory motor, we're actually trying to teach you to stay in that window. So the first thing we're doing is actually working with your body. How do you use your body to calm down and relax? What kinds of things can you do that actually help you when you're stressed or when you're outside of your window so that you can bring yourself back in? That's really, really important when you're working with PTSD. Anybody with PTSD needs to know what to do with their body to help them come back into their window of tolerance. Then we start to work with your body in order to work with PTSD. So one of the things that is so cool about the sensory motor psychotherapy, if I can ever say that word right today, the thing that's really cool about it is we can work with your body to actually release the PTSD. So PTSD gets caught in your body if you go into what's more called a submit state, right? So it's like we have animal defenses. One is like active, so it's like fight or flight. I've got to run away. I'm too panicked, or I'm gonna like engage in a fight with you. If you are able to do those two things, you're less likely to develop more intense PTSD. It's when it goes to the other side of your nervous system into what is the more numbing, dissociated, passive submit states, that's where PTSD gets more locked in. That's where we have to work with your body to shift it out of those spaces and into something that's more of an active animal defense so you have a successful completion. That actually helps relieve a tremendous amount of the PTSD. I've seen huge results with PTSD by using this technique. It's actually been really exciting. The other thing that is really great about sensory motor is that you work with developmental issues as well. So things that may have gotten caught in childhood in earlier places that are stuck in your body develops ways that it just holds the trauma inside of your body. So if we start to make slight shifts in your body, a lot of the grief and a lot of the stuff that got stuck comes out. So it's really quite phenomenal.
So I'm guessing that you've experienced that for yourself when you were getting trained in this. Like you did that for yourself as a patient or a client, right?
Well, so in the training for sensory motor, every new skill that they do exercises with you where as you are engaging as a therapist and you are engaging as a client. So I have definitely experienced a lot of the shifts and changes that happened. with that. As a therapist working with it, I've seen so many things that have been just really incredibly helpful, really quickly. So because of some of the training that I've had actually with my own body, if things that have happened around me that have been really traumatic, I've learned what to do to actually release it so that I don't develop PTSD on things that you actually often would develop PTSD on. That's what's really interesting about it.
Can you give an example or two on?
Let me think about that. Well, I think one that's easy to talk about is car accidents. So when somebody gets in a car accident, they're often just carrying that trauma in their body, and they come in and they're like, I was in this car accident, and they'll be a little bit nervous about driving. Sometimes they don't want to drive at all. Oftentimes they don't want to drive, but they do drive because they have to drive. And so that's actually been something that's really empowering, is then we go through the accident and process it through the body, which is the last place that you process when you're processing trauma. And that's the most integrative experience. So when we process that through, I'll do different interventions where maybe I'm, pushing, or maybe we're, putting the brake on, things that would have happened in the accident. And what happens is then the person actually kind of goes through and releases the grief and all the adrenaline that is caught in the body. And then a lot of people have said, I've had no trauma after that. Once we release it from your body, it's like it's been released, which is great, which is really exciting.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's like you had like one session and cleared this out, right? And I've worked a lot with like sexual trauma and, different kinds of, and, lots of different like issues of crime when people have been victims of crime, and use this intervention. And we've been able to release trauma very, very quickly. So that is actually really exciting.
Well, do you have sometimes clients who, aren't ready to go through that motion? You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. That's why in the very beginning, a lot of the work is actually teaching skills that help to make it a safer experience. So I'll have people put like a weighted blanket on sometimes, and that may be really helpful to them to help regulate or feel calmer in their body. I may have them put pillows around them to see, does that give more distance? We may experiment with how far away you need me to be versus close, so that it feels like you're in a safe space. There's a lot of things that you learn through the wisdom of your body by listening to your body that you don't get in other ways. That's actually one of the reasons I really like people to come in person, because I watch their body closely when I'm working with them, and if I see things starting to happen, I'm able to actually jump in and use that opportunity right then and there. A lot of times, even in the first session, I'm already starting to do some of the somatic work so that they're getting a benefit right off the bat.
So do majority, like, what type of clients, in terms of the type of trauma, is sensory motor most effective for? Like, is it just any trauma that this could help, or?
Well, honestly, a lot of clients benefit from sensory motor. You don't even have to have PTSD. You can release anxiety. You can work with anxiety through your body. People with panic attacks, knowing what to do somatically can be incredibly helpful, so that the panic attack doesn't take over. Now, sometimes it's not going to be enough, but a lot of times that's all you need, so it's really empowering.